film from the website. There are 20 films on the website, and as you can see, it kind of goes from the origins of conflict, sort of development of genocide ideologies, why it happened and all of that, through the genocide and then the aftermath and the recovery process and a bit of today. So there are about 20 films on the website. 3 or 4 of them deal with this community justice process called Gacaca. I'll show you just one. It's about 3 minutes. Traditionally, Gacaca was the process for solving neighbourhood and family disputes.
Whenever somebody would commit something bad, he was brought to the community and explained why he did it and what he did it, and the community would decide how to deal with that.
In 2001, a new form of Gacaca was introduced to ease the pressure on Rwanda's overcrowded jails and court system.
Aho kugira ngo bakujyane ku rukiko, kuko kujyana umuntu ku rukiko byabaga ari nko gushaka inzangano, wajyaga muri Gacaca bakaguhana kandi ugasaba imbabazi maze bakiyunga.
Bashobore kuba abasabye imbabazi bababarirwe, bafungurwe, hanyuma n'abakoze ibyaha kandi nabo bagire igihe bahanirwa ariko nyine imanza zirangire.
The idea was that since the genocide had taken place in local communities, then those people should be given the task of figuring out what to do about it.
The killings happened in the community, the people watched it, they saw it, they know who did it, they know who didn't do it, then everybody has to be involved.
I think in Rwanda, Gacaca was an attempt to bring reconciliation and justice very closely together. I think there was an idea that if you could involve the population in the justice process, if you could encourage people to participate with one another, that the process of justice might improve their relations, that they may actually practice living together by going through this justice process. And I think there was also a sense that if you could use different forms of punishment, that maybe that would aid reconciliation in the long term. So that's one of the reasons why Gacaca emphasises community service and compensation rather than just imprisoning people.
One of the tasks for the Gacaca courts was to collect information. What happened? Who in this community was involved? Tell us what you did with the bodies so that the relatives can give them a proper burial.
Ubundi aho bitandukaniye nuko ziriya nkiko zindi zisa nkaho zihana zirahana, ariko Gacaca niyo kunga Abanyarwanda.
Bikajya mu muryango ugasaba imbabazi nabo bakaguca igihano ariko cyoroheje, bagamije kugira ngo baguhane ariko kandi banagamije yuko wiyunga nabo wakoreye icyaha.
It's this idea that you have to try and get people out of jail and back into the community and make them productive members of that community again. It means getting them back onto the farms. It means encouraging them to participate in daily life. And if they can perform community service and if they can deliver compensation, maybe those perpetrators can deliver tangible benefits to survivors and to victims. And then in doing so, that might also encourage healthier relationships between the individuals.
So because relationships and community are so important to Rwandans, I think most of them had got on board fairly quickly with the idea that Rwanda should be a home again for all Rwandans. And so I think most of them felt that if that is to be true, then at least a few steps towards a workable, practical reconciliation between survivors and perpetrators need to be taken. So in the aftermath of genocide in Rwanda, perhaps different to the years after the Holocaust, the close proximity between perpetrators and survivors has been a big factor. We're back together in our villages. We've got nowhere else to go. So what choice really do we have? We carry on with a cycle of violence or revenge, or we find a way to exist together. Now just finally, what do Rwandans mean by recovery and forgiveness? Well, for killers, In prison, sometimes killers, out of a fear of either revenge or perhaps remorse or a combination of both, sometimes sent messages of apology to families because they knew they were going to be going back into those communities, hoping it would make their return home a little easier. Sometimes their expectations were unrealistic. And that was a good start. But if there was to be any hope of successful reintegration of these people into their communities, they needed to be pretty upfront about what they'd done. But if they just recited those litany of excuses, well, it wasn't me, it was the others. Or if the Tutsis hadn't run away, it wouldn't have happened. If I hadn't done it, someone else would have done it worse. Then they would receive little sympathy. Survivors out there on the hills usually didn't place much weight on apologies from a distance. A note from a refugee camp, a note from the Congo, a note from prison for some public display of remorse in a church. One survivor said, "Real regrets are said eye to eye, not to statues of God." Some killers got it. And one said, "Regret is like death. You must bring it back to your own hill." So then the survivors, for many, the first step seemed to be just trying to find a reason to live again. Why should I keep going? And then came the need to deal with the things that were locked up inside you. People had seen relatives cut in pieces and raped, babies hit against walls. People had seen too much. A man on there, Antoine Richasiri, a pastor and community worker, who later became head of the NURC, the National Unity and Reconciliation Commission, said sometimes the stories you hear from survivors are just so awful. You think, how can I possibly talk to this person about recovery or healing? And then you think, but for the benefit of this person and for the sake of the rest of their life, so that the rest of their life is not stuffed, I have to talk about it. He didn't say stuff. The only other active option, there are passive options, just revenge, denial and just pretending it didn't happen. But the only other active option really was revenge. But one survivor said, "You kill someone in my family, I kill someone in yours. After a while that gets really discouraging." And yeah, there's the problem with using revenge as any kind of solution. It's depressing, disheartening, unsatisfactory, destabilising, demoralising and toxic. A way to deal with disputes. Man's inner humanity to man is passed on to the next generation. The cycle of killing continues, nobody's happy. So, a Rwandan definition of forgiveness, almost unbelievable. To Rwandans, forgiveness has at least two sides. The first is letting go of that bitterness and revenge over what's happened to you. And they see that, as the film suggested, not so much as something you do for the perpetrator, but something you do for yourself. Because it releases you from this horrible connection that you have with the person who did it. Up until then you're tied to it. Everything they do, every time you hear them, every time you see them, you just get a kick. And the feeling is a way of letting go, breaking that connection between, so that you can have a bit of peace. And the second part for them is about compensation and truth-telling and proof of genuine remorse on the part of the perpetrator. What you did was wrong. What are you going to do to help repay, help repair in some way some of the damage that you've caused? You can't bring back a life, but you can do something. If you're involved in any stories of what Rwandans are doing in reconciliation, you'll get your feet dirty with mud bricks. Perpetrators building houses for survivors. Every time I've been there, surrounded by mud bricks as people do that. Survivors and perpetrators together building houses as a way of saying, we want to give something back. We can't bring back your relatives, but we can do that. So, for Rwandans, the concept of forgiveness is a strong one. It's a decision not to take revenge, but it also has elements of justice, personal recovery from the damage done, and the offer of freedom for both victim and perpetrator to go on and live productive lives without being prisoners of the past. So, in summing up, Rwandans are a proud, fairly quiet people who value relationships and intelligence and the careful but challenging expression of ideas. Compared to the exuberance of, say, Nigerians or Kenyans, Rwandans' music and dance is kind of subtle African art house. A Rwandan told us once, our idea of a party is long speeches and a warm Fanta. They love stories, they laugh, they enjoy life, but they also take it kind of seriously. To many Westerners who've grown up with a kind of relaxed but pervasive cynicism about many aspects of life, Rwandans can seem almost old-fashioned. But if you mistake that for something bland or weak or shallow, they have the ability to take you on with an intellectual strength and conviction that will wipe the floor with most of us. So today, a week after getting back, I'm still feeling jet-lagged and compared to Rwandans, inarticulate and uncivilised, which seems the perfect time to take some questions. So.
Could we please thank David first? Thank you very much for that.